Am I level? Welcome to a place. It's a place where they had a former Soviet airbase, and today it's a theme park. So as you can see behind me, they're using some of the old hardened aircraft shelters for new purposes. That one's for shooting arrows, right? Target practice. So we're going to look around here. There's a couple of different bunkers that they're using right here in this area, but what I really want to find are the bunkers that are off in the woods. See if we can find something that's a little more original, a little less refined. Got some old steps here. That's got German writing on it. There's something here, and then this whole area is just kind of rounded off. So you tell me what that was all about. Perhaps some kind of water tower was up there. This area, or this base, when it was operational, was known as Brand, B-R-A-N-D, or sometimes Brand-Briesen Air Force Base. And it was begun during the World War II era under the Nazis. They put the first airport in here, first base, and then after the war ended, of course, the Soviets moved in and they really built a big place here. Added a lot in the 1950s all the way through the 1980s. Little building, once used for who knows what. And there's not much online, a lot of information. I mean, you can find a little bit that gives you sort of aerial views of Brand-Briesen when it was in operation, a little bit of information about it, right? But generally it was used as a fighter base, and we'll see a couple of different styles of those hardened shelters that would protect the fighter planes. Let's see if we can find some of those. I think I see up in here an aircraft shelter that it isn't fully covered on the top. Might get a look at it here on the top of the hill. So it would have been semi-protected, you might say, but not protected from precipitation or from something landing right on top of this area here, right? So there would have been fighter jet parked in between these big concrete walls, blast walls you might say, and then we're actually standing on top of one of the blast walls. I imagine that they would have piled all this dirt up here to support that wall right there. So we've got two shelters. There's that one there, and got this one here. Both of them look to be kind of like a newer design, quite a bit larger, I think, than the shelter you saw right at the start of the video that they were using now for archery, right? So they're quite large, quite hefty, you might say. And of course they did these in arrangements by which the jets could pull out into this sort of common circular area, make their way to the taxiway, then onto the runway. I'll show you how these big doors would have worked. Presumably these doors would have had to open quite quickly because of course those jets would potentially have to scramble out of here on short notice in the event of war or the threat of war. It would be quite a ways just to get to the runway, right? So they'd be hurrying, and this door would have to roll along these railroad tracks until it fully opened, and that jet would just come shooting out of there off on its way to the runway. You can see up here, this is another situation where if the Ushanka show could help us out at all, but I'll just describe what that says. I presume that was scratched into the concrete when this was built, probably at least in 1970s. It looks like Amapara. I'll just read the last part here in letters. M-A-K-A-D TE upside down V backwards R dash NACE. And I didn't read even the first part before the little dash there. There's some more writing up here, right there. And I won't read the top line, but I'll just spell out the bottom. It says ER-BAPABE upside down V. And then you can see there's little inside of the parentheses there. R, E, backward N, upside down L, O, perhaps an N or an M. And then, very interestingly, I see 3 stars. I hope you can see stamped into that area there. Somebody actually took like a stamp and hit it 3 times when this was being built. I can see a little bit of perhaps a hammer and sickle inside of those little stars. So that's pretty frickin' awesome. We're finding stuff that had to have been done when this place was being constructed. This shelter, I don't know, I'm gonna guess maybe early 1970s, but the construction era really lasted from the early 50s through the 1980s. So I've got you set up here on my bike that I rented. We'll just take a walk into this one here. We've got some writing on the outside that presumably was marking something, right? Soviet markings there. And then there's a sign here that they've added, of course, in German that says this is a protected bat area. And I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but has something to do with owls apparently too, which I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm not a huge bird guy, but if I had to pick the coolest bird, I think it would have to be the owl. Yes, I know, hummingbirds are pretty awesome, but there's just something about owls. We'll see how this was constructed here. Hopefully you can see that it was essentially a bunch of rings that were pushed together and then bolted. And there you have some metal doors that would have just essentially gone to the outside of the shelter. Sort of like a human way in and out when you didn't want to have to open these giant doors. Get a look at the wheels that these things had inside the door there. Let's ride. Maybe I'll just let it roll. We'll ride around a little bit, get more of an idea of what this place is all about, right? Here's another one, same style. We're riding on concrete from probably the 1950s, but certainly a lot of concrete out here. It may be a little bit dark in here. Be nicer if it was lighter, but I guess it's all about the plants. They have to be able to survive in here with just the right amount of light, no matter what the season. Summer or, of course, the much harsher winter seasons, where you're not going to get as much light. So I don't know if they have a way to regulate that, but right now in July, a little bit dark in here. Otherwise, nice enough. We're in kind of a quiet spot here where we can do a little bit more observing without worrying the people around here that we're recording them. It can be kind of a sensitive thing. So we're just following the guy around. He's walking the balloon. And this is what it looks like inside of this former airship hangar. Here's a look at some of the alternate accommodations. They've got little tents here, kind of a beachy area, but it is pretty warm, pretty humid inside of here, so I'm glad I didn't even end up paying more than I already did to stay in a tiny little tent. It might even be worse than the teepee situation, which at least is outside, a little bit more aired out. Yes, musty. And this is what people in this part of the world do when they want to take a fun weekend. Hopefully you can see some of the structure here. There's just tons of people just kind of laying around in the water, out of the water. It's not really my thing, but I'd much rather look at old Soviet airbase stuff. How about you?